welcome to this episode of the Wagging Tales podcast. On this episode, we are going to be talking about thunderphobia, how to recognise it, and how to manage it, and eventually, how to solve it. With me, I have, as always, Jay, who is probably one of the most qualified people to talk to with regards to this situation, because he has been on a real journey with regards to this and his dog Blue. So
journey's not over either.
that's it. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about how he has dealt with that, not just as a professional, but also as a pet guardian himself, because a lot of the time we talk about things as professionals, and if we've not fully immersed ourselves in what it's like as owners, as pet guardians, it can be a little bit different from what some of our clients experience. Now, before we move on, I just want to introduce everybody to a few things that we are doing at Noble Canine at the moment, because there has been a few changes. First of all, I would like to introduce Hermes, who is our admin and assistant during our group classes and when we're needed. So for everybody watching, please welcome Hermes. Hermes, say hi.
Hello, can they see me?
Yeah, they can.
Okay, hi.
Okay, so Hermes is actually an ex-client who has done absolutely phenomenal work with her dog. So we're really glad to have her on board. You'll be seeing a lot of her just when you're contacting with us and through social media, and if you turn up to our classes and things like that. On that note, we've got a few different classes that are currently running. We've got loose leash walking, both a foundation class and guided walks. Now, these foundation classes are giving you the basic tools that are needed to teach your dog, and of course yourself, how to walk without the pulling, without the distractions, without the stress. And the guided walks are going an actual walk with your dog and other dogs, and we being there to guide you, to help you use all the tools that we have given you properly on these walks. They're very, very useful. A lot of people have already had great results with those. We do those on Saturdays. Have a look at our website if you're interested in those. We're currently doing them at East Coast Park, but as time goes on, there will be other areas that we'll be doing them in as well. We've also got Puppy Power. Now, this is our puppy group training. This is not something that we have done before. This is something that we kept getting asked to do. We normally have left the puppies to others, although we do love puppies, although we love training with puppies. Normally, we've focused on the more behavioural issues, but we're diving into the puppy stuff, and to be honest, it's absolutely great fun. We've seen some amazing results already, and we're halfway through this current course that we're doing. The next course starts on the 7th of June. I believe you can find information on that on the website as well. And of course, you can always reach out to us and we'll give you all the information you need if that's something that you're interested in. And starting off very, very soon, hopefully this weekend, is fear-free grooming. If you're having a hard time cutting your dog's nail, grooming your dog, brushing your dog's teeth, being able to handle your dog without your dog getting really struggly or skittish, this class is for you. It's a 2-part class. I'll let Jay give you the rundown on this one, because this is actually Jay's area. It's not my area. So Jay, do you want to tell us a little bit about that before we dive into thunderphobia?
Yeah, thanks, Fraser. It's not only just about how to groom your dog. It's more about understanding what you should do to ensure that your dog has a stress-free grooming session. It's more of how would I put it? So if your dog has some issues already going to the groomers, this course will actually help you, give you the knowledge and the information and all the right exercises that you can do with your dog to make sure that when you eventually do bring your dog to the groomers again, they won't be as stressed about it. So of course, I would say that go ahead, pick up this course if you want to learn how to groom your dogs at home as well. But even for those that are sending your dogs to the groomers, and then you know that your dog has a tough time at the groomers tell you that your dog is gets stressed out at during the grooming session and stuff like that, you should come and attend this course as well, because a groomer's job is just to groom your dog. They don't always, they have to get the job done. So sometimes they have to strap your dog down, or they have to muzzle your dog and things like that. So just so that they can clip their nails, or so that they can brush out the mapping in their fur, or even some of the simpler grooming stuff. And that causes your dog a lot of stress. And then if you don't prepare your dog for the grooming session properly, your dog is just going to be more and more afraid of going to grooming sessions. And from your dog's perspective, it's like, this person who I consider my family, my owner, my caretaker, the one that I trust the most, is bringing me to somewhere that I really dislike or I'm really scared of, leaving me there for a few hours, and then coming to pick me up after that. So it really breaks the bond between you and your dog if every single grooming session is a very stressful one.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know a lot of people that would really benefit from that. And of course, moving forward, there will be other courses coming up. We're going to be doing preparing your dog for the vet visits course. And we're also going to be doing things like fitness with your dog, not to be confused with fitness for your dog. This is going to be a class where we're going to be doing circuit training for both you and your dog, helping with the bond, and of course, getting your dog and yourself in shape. So look forward to those ones, as well as keeping an eye out for online courses, which will be coming up as well. Okay, so with all of that stuff out of the way, let's dive in to the topic at hand. Thunder phobia. So first of all, Jay, tell us exactly what thunder phobia is from the point of view, not just of a professional, but also as somebody whose dog struggles with this.
Okay, so thunderphobia is something that is related to, of course, just rain, thunder. It could be the sight, the smell of it. You know, sometimes there's a change in the weather. It could be the sound of the rain or the thunder, and it could be the sight of it, of course. So any of these things could trigger a fear response in dogs, and then they start to showcase signs of stress. They start to become very scared, and then a few signs that I've noticed in Blue especially was that she started pacing a lot. She started scratching at the floor, you know, kind of just like digging into the ground, although she's not going to dig through anything. It's just the floor. She suddenly pants a lot, and she starts drooling a lot, and she whines sometimes as well. And the worst one I seen was that Blue started trying to scratch on her bed so much that her paw started bleeding. So that was how intense it got. So there's different levels of thunderphobia between dogs. Some of them are on the lesser side, some of them are on the heavier side. Thunderphobia can range anywhere from, like what I just said, where Blue scratches and then starts injuring herself, to even the milder ones that people don't even realize. Like your dog just hides under the bed when it's raining. And a lot of people think like, oh, you know what, that's fine. But they're still causing stress for your dog. There's still a lot of things you can do. You shouldn't just let it sit and think that everything's okay.
So from the point of view of a professional, I'm just going to explain exactly what thunderphobia truly is. Now, thunderphobia is kind of the more popular term for it, but it's actually called astrophobia. And this is when dogs, or indeed people, exhibit intense fear in response to thunder or the associated elements of storms. This can severely impact anyone's life who is dealing with it, as it's a real intense, distressing situation. And worst of all, it's a phobia of something that most of the time are unavoidable. You can't really avoid the weather. If the weather decides to be a storm, it's a storm. There's really nothing you can do about that. As Jay said, the intense fear reaction is automatic, and it's often very disproportionate to the actual threat posed by the storm, which which actually is the definition between a genuine fear and a phobia. A fear is something which is, from an evolutionary standpoint, beneficial. Being scared of poisonous snakes is beneficial to your survival. Being scared of oranges, being scared of a thunderstorm when you're actually in a safe environment, these are things that can actually be detrimental to your survival, whether it be through excess stress or putting yourself into dangerous situations or even self-harm. So a lot of this is not actually just triggered through the thunder itself. It can be through associated storm phenomena. So it can be triggered not only by the sound, but also by other aspects such as the lightning, heavy rain, wind, atmospheric pressure, even just the smell of rain. So you've got all of these different aspects which need to be looked at with regards to thunderphobia. Now, Jay, on that topic, do you want to go into the causes of thunderphobia and why dogs tend to suffer from it more so than the likes of humans?
Yep, of course. Okay, so I mean, just between dogs and humans, it's like we can make more logical assumptions, whereas dogs can't do that. So, thunderphobia and its causes, the main one would be because dogs have more sensitive hearing compared to what we have. So their hearing is a lot more superior to ours. They can hear things outside what we normally hear, which isn't just for thunderphobia, of course, because Blue can hear another dog from like, I don't know, 500 meters away, and then suddenly starts running to the window and looking at the dog, and I can't even see the dog sometimes. So things like the thunder coming in, they can hear because they have very sensitive hearing, even though we don't realize it yet. There could be negative experiences associated with thunderstorms, which reinforces the fear. So there might be traumatic events during particular thunderstorms that have impacted your dog quite severely. And I think I talked to you about this one before, right, Fraser? There was this period of time where I was working with Blue, and her thunderphobia was still pretty bad. And for some goddamn reason, every time I left the house, it started raining heavily, like within that 15-30 minutes. And then so Blue already has separation anxiety. So that could have impacted, I'm pretty sure it did. It impacted her thunderphobia to be a lot more than just what it was at the start. It grew worse over time. So that's one of the negative experiences that dogs can associate with thunderstorms. Because from Blue's perspective is that she already has separation anxiety, she already has thunderphobia. And they just combined these two together and it became a lot worse. The next one would be things like breeds. So herding dogs are genetically more prone to getting anxieties and phobias because they have traits that enhance their working abilities, which makes them more sensitive to things like stress and fears. So I'm pretty sure that if anybody were to get a herding dog, they would do their research, but also be aware of things like this. And last but not least is the lack of exposure to storms during your early development stages. So, Fraser, I think you know that our clients that got puppies in London, they don't really have thunderphobia because it's always raining over there. They're not worried about it. Yeah, so it's not exactly something that you have full control over. Maybe like the first 3 months that you got your puppy, it doesn't rain at all. And then suddenly it starts raining and then it's a huge storm. It's not like just a little bit of a drizzle. So you have to be very prepared for things like that because it's basically their first experience or their first few experiences. But you can do some form of desensitization in the form of like sounds. You can always play the sounds of like rain in the background or light thunder, nothing to scare your puppy too much. But then the sooner you do it and the more gradual you expose them to it, it helps a lot compared to their first experience to a huge thunderstorm, which can be very fearful, can be very stressful for dogs.
we'll go more into that in a little bit. The one thing that you just said there that was quite interesting, Jay, is dogs that have got their puppies in like London where it's always raining, they tend not to get such bad thunder phobia. At the same time, we've had some clients that have had their dogs in areas where there's not very much rain or not very much thunder. Maybe they've been in Dubai or something like that. And they come over to Singapore, for example, where there's a lot of thunder, or they go to Miami or one of the other tropical regions where you get a lot of these tropical storms. And all of a sudden, these dogs are absolutely terrified.
Yep.
Or even as simple as a dog who spent most of their life in a landed property which was quite sheltered. And then all of a sudden, they've moved to a high-rise condo where the thunder is way more intense. And that can actually have a big impact on them as well. That change in environment can have a big impact on how the dogs see those storms, and they can actually create that thunder phobia. So there's many different ways that thunder phobia can be created, how it can be caused. One of the main ones that I have seen is the negative experience with thunderstorms. That's normally one of the biggest ones, especially when it comes to rescue dogs. To be honest, if they've been outside during a storm which was particularly bad, that can happen quite regularly. Okay, so
like, sorry, one more thing, like at the shelters as well, they don't have the best
Yes.
roofs. Yeah, it's those kind of like tin roofs, or I don't know what it is. So when rain hits the roof, it creates so much echo and noise. So a lot of shelter dogs I know do have has pretty bad thunder phobia as well.
yeah. Okay, so recognizing the signs of this is very important. As Jay mentioned earlier on, there's some mild symptoms, moderate symptoms, and then you get stuff that's really quite severe. So some of the ones that we've noticed is simple things that some people just sort of think, oh, the dog's just uncomfortable. But it's important to understand that this is a sign of anxiety and it is something that needs to be dealt with. But you'll notice some dogs just being unable to settle. They're moving around constantly, maybe pacing, looking for a place to hide, as it were, or even just whining and barking, being more vocal than they normally are. This sort of thing can seem quite mild to us as humans, but that's the dog trying to communicate to us, saying, look, I'm distressed, I need help here. And then you get things that are slightly more moderate anxiety symptoms, like hiding. They can start hiding underneath tables, furniture, beds. Again, Jay said earlier that some people think this is fine, but that's the same as us hiding in a closet or hiding somewhere in a small space, try and get away from a fear. If that was us doing that, we would see that as quite serious. The other one that's at the same sort of level is dog clinging to their owners. They can sometimes just refuse to leave you alone if they're experiencing these anxiety symptoms during a storm. And then you get things all the way up to trembling, shaking, destructive behavior, which is where they attempt to escape from their own home or their crate or their penned area. I've seen situations where a dog has been so anxious from a storm that they've broken the window frame and ended up out on the balcony ledge, which is incredibly dangerous. I've also seen, as Jay mentioned, dogs that have chewed holes in their own paws because they're so anxious about thunders and things like this. It's absolutely horrendous. And then, of course, the one that people think about the most is loss of their bladder control or their own bowels. Incontinence is a symptom of extreme fear and anxiety. And these are just some. A lot of these fears can manifest in different ways that we are not talking about right now because they're maybe not the most common. Jay, do you have anything else that you want to mention just to help people identify what some of the symptoms might be for things like thunder phobia, or as well fireworks are just the same, to be honest?
Yeah, same as separation anxiety as well. Actually, a lot of these symptoms can be applicable to different forms of phobias or anxiety-related behavioral issues with dogs. You've covered basically all of the symptoms, but what I want to do is read some of the messages.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Samantha said that the only thing I do that calms Pedro down is a nice dog earmuff, a nice snug Chang beer singlet. Everyone seems to have those. I don't have one of those. And I shut all blinds down and turn on Paw Patrol on high volume. So you have a routine to help with Pedro's thunder phobia. That's good. And hopefully it's never escalated to some of the severe symptoms that Fraser has mentioned. But there's still a lot more we can do for our dogs. So for Blue, as I did more counter conditioning and positive reinforcement with her regarding thunder phobia, I noticed the signs go from like severe to moderate to mild. Now it's still at mild, but then the more I do, the more I realize that sometimes she doesn't even show any of these symptoms at all when it rains. So there's still a lot of things that you can work on. One thing I like a lot of people, I hope that a lot of people will learn from listening in is that you can completely take away thunder phobia. It's not something it's impossible to do. It's not something that you should be happy with if it's just like that kind of thing, if you get what I mean. And Esther said, hi guys, Sandy's 10 years old now, and she never had thunder phobia, but has suddenly developed it from early this year. Would there be a reason for it? Yeah, there's always a reason for it. It's just sometimes we don't realize it at the start. So
one thing I will say here is, because I know Sandy, and Sandy's a little bit older. So as much as I mentioned earlier on about how it can occur from negative experiences and associated with thunderstorms, as a dog gets older, we sometimes forget what this actually does to them, because we spend so much time focusing on the different phases of puppyhood and the development of puppyhood that we forget about what happens in old age. So as these dogs become slightly older, they end up almost regressing a little bit. They're not as confident as they once were. They're not as confident within themselves. So it means that situations which they once would have just sort of brushed off are a lot tougher for them now. So they can actually become more impacted by, ironically, what's called bolt experiences or bolt learning. Talking about thunder phobia and using bolt seems strange, but that's the term for it. Something that can be a very obvious and very clear learning moment, which normally can be brushed off, can be a lot scarier for them in their old age. So that's a potential for sure. It doesn't mean that it's the exact reason for it. There could have been something else that happened, but that knowing Sandy, that's probably the most likely situation that's happened there.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. So basically what Fraser just said. Sam also said Pedro does all the pacing, scratching my oven to want to go in. So what do we do when this happens? Aside what I'm currently doing. You also said he peed before on the bed, etc. But that was because I was not home. I try not to go out when it's going to storm. So here's the tough part. We can't really have control over that as much as we want to. Like, unless you have a super flexible schedule and like you can choose when you want to go out and you always check the weather reports and stuff like that. It's very difficult to predict when it's going to rain and then when it's going to storm and try to arrange that according to your daily schedule. So what you can do is something that we're gonna go into right now. I'll start it off, Fraser. So there's a lot of management strategies that you should take a look at first. The first thing that you always look at is your environment, what you can do to adjust your environment to help your dog. So number one is always creating a safe space. that this is for any form of stress, anxiety. Always create a safe space for your dog. So whatever space that you choose to shape for your dog, like it could be the corner of in the room, it could be like the side of the balcony, in the kitchen, wherever you want it to. The area should always be very quiet, should be well sheltered. You can't put them out in the garden, and it should have all of the things that your dog finds comforting. So it could be like your dog has a favorite blanket or favorite chew toy, some kind of bedding. Like I recently got this from what's this called? What's the bed that we bought? Big Borky. So they have this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you can see it. It's like a very fluffy kind of like blanket from Big Borky. So they call it the anxiety blanket. Whether it is or not, it does not really matter. It's just that it's very comfortable and it can be shaped to be like a safe space kind of thing as well. So that helps a lot. This space should also be somewhere that's not too stimulating for your dogs. So like maybe not right by the window where your dog can look out, or not too close to the front door, or not too close to anywhere that there's too much traffic going on. Like they don't just run back and there's not a lot of people walking back and forth, not right by your main door and things like that. So all of this is your first step into making a safe space, so that when there is any form of stress for your dog, they go there first. And it's very important as well that when your dog goes to their safe space, you do not drag your dog out of it. You do not go and disturb your dog while they're in their safe space. So if Blue or Ori is lying down in their little beds or in their safe spaces, I don't go over and try to invade their safe spaces. I don't go over and try to hug them in their bed or sit right next to them in their bed and things like that. They know that they can get my attention by coming to me, but if they want to choose to go and lie down there and rest there because they're stressed out, I give them complete space to themselves. And it's very important, if you have more than one dog at home as well, they respect each other's safe spaces. So if Blue is in her bed, Ori doesn't go and disturb her, and vice versa. Next is sound masking. So like who was it? Samantha said earlier, you put the dog earmuffs. That's very good. So there's sound masking things that you can help out. That can help your dog with noises of like thunderstorms, rain, and things like that. So it's a lot of like white noise, calming music. There's specific dog related de-stressing songs on Spotify that you can take a look at. So all these help your dog mask the sound of whatever's going on outside. So it helps your dog not hear thunder, and then it lowers their anxiety. The music does not actually calm your dog down, so don't get it wrong. It's used to just mask the sounds of things that could trigger your dog. So you guys can try taking a look at it by searching on Spotify, or if not, I think Hermes, if you have any link for like the Spotify playlist, you can send it as well. If not, we'll put it in the notes after this.
I've just shot it up there.
Thank you.
So the one thing I will say about the Through a Dog's Ear link that I just sent is that most music or sound won't actually relax your dog. However, the Through a Dog's Ear one actually has been shown through studies to relax your dog through extended exposure. So things like separation anxiety, things like thunderphobia, even things down to like social anxiety, with enough exposure to that specific playlist, it has shown some improvement for dogs. Now, it's not a one thing fix. You can't just play that and expect everything to go perfect. But it is interesting that the study has been done which showed this. I don't have that study off the top of my head, but I can try and find it in a little while Jay's talking next, and see if I can find it. But what I will just move on to a little bit here is the actual thing about sound dampening. Now, admittedly, we do talk about sound dampening a little bit more when it comes to tools, but if you're watching this on Facebook and you just see this drawing or painting or whatever you would call it above me here. This is actually a noise dampening panel. So it means that the idea is that it can make the acoustics better for things like this, when I'm doing online consultations and things like that. But it also makes this room quieter. So hopefully, none of you listening now can hear my daughter shouting and screaming in the room next door. Hopefully, none of you can hear the TV going or anything like that, or any noise outside. And the same things that helps for recording podcasts, for recording music, it also helps with your dog's just suppression of sounds outside. So although we're talking about thunder phobia, this is the same for fireworks, this is the same for traffic noise, this is the same for a dog that reacts to noises outside in the corridor. Even things like having the soundproofing along your windows and your doors. All of this can help your dogs, and it's something that we need to look at if the actual audio, if the sound is what is triggering your dog with regards to their anxieties. So that's effectively the best management forms within the environmental side of things. There is, of course, the pharmaceutical interventions. Now, before we talk about anything to do with this, I want to make it very, very clear that neither Jay or myself are medical vets.
Not
Neither
yet.
Jay, neither Jay or myself are medical behaviorists. There is a difference between being a canine behavior consultant and specialist other than on the medical front. It's kind of the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. Psychiatrists are more into the medical side of things, the drugs, pharmaceuticals. That's not our expertise. So although we are going to be talking about this, if you are wanting to talk about this, you can of course approach us and we will send you in the correct direction, or you can find somebody who's actually what they call a behavioral vet. So that's something to look at if it gets that serious. So when do you consider medications? Now, medications should be considered when environmental modifications and behavioral modifications, which we'll be talking about after this, have become insufficient to manage your dog's anxiety. It's really relevant in cases where the dog's reaction to storms is so severe that it's leading to destruction or self-harm, things along those lines. So don't just turn to medication for no reason. It's not something that I would ever advise that you just quickly say, oh, let's get my dog on drugs. That's something more for the extreme cases. However, there are certain things that you can look at when you talk to your vet about this. You've got benzodiazepines, such as, your, I'm never going to be able to pronounce these properly. They're basically like your Xanax for dogs. Then you've got
Fluoxetine, alprazolam.
no, fluoxetine's an SSRI.
Oh, okay.
So these are different types of drugs. So you've got your SSRIs as well, which are more your antidepressant style drugs, your Prozac, your fluoxetines, things like that. But as I say, these should only be used under strict veterinary or preferably behavioral veterinary supervision. Okay, now those medications can only manage the symptoms of anxiety. Those medications will not fix the fear response to thunder. They will not fix the fear or the anxiety. These should definitely be used in conjunction with behavioral modification with your behavioral specialists, your behavioral consultants. Again, bearing in mind that there is a difference between your dog trainers, your behavioral dog trainers, and your behavioral consultants. When it comes to things like anxiety, that's something to be aware of as well. Now, this is something that we will touch on just because I saw Samantha asking about this. The calming powder, which is useful for Pedro's thunder behavior, and for Paolo's anxiety, yes, that is useful for both. But Cam Canine, which is one of the supplements that can be used, is effectively a supplement. It's a supportive thing. It's not a drug. So it's important to understand that when we talk about supplements, we're talking about things like Cam Canine, which is natural ingredients such as L-theanine, L-tryptophan, and things like that. Then you've got things like zelekin, which is based on colostrum, which is a protein found in milk, which is known to calm newborns while they're still being breastfed or fed by their mothers. And that's also a very good one. And then you've even got things such as Adaptil or your pheromone producers. And those are actually useful as well. But again, these are supportive supplementations and pheromones that are not fixies. I would always advise people try these before turning to drugs. But your products such as diffusers, sprays, collars, chemicals that mimic the natural pheromones produced by dogs, these can help dogs in high stress situations. Things such as L-theanine, L-tryptophan, colostrum, these things can be great benefits to dogs which are in stressful situations, but they are not fixies, they are not solutions. They're tools to assist in the actual behavioral modification. And this goes for the same thing that Samantha mentioned in the comments, Jay mentioned earlier on, and Hermes mentioned as well, is you've got certain tools and products such as calming blankets, weighted blankets, even similar to the blankets that humans might wear if they get stressed out or trouble sleeping. You've also got the noise dampening panels or even kennels. So the panels, like the things that I've got above, those are useful. You actually get kennels which are lined with these, so that's a lot more quiet for your dogs during stressful situations. I've got a client who lives in California, actually, where they have a lot of fireworks. They do have thunderstorms, and of course, they also have gunshots as well, which her dog was struggling with greatly. She ended up getting one of these kennels, and that helped her dog greatly on top of the exercises that we were using to work on. And now I'm happy to say that dog is doing much better. Then you've got things such as thunder jackets, which are effectively compression tops for dogs, which provide consistent and gentle pressure on the torso, which is kind of similar to the idea of swaddling a baby, and it's designed to help calm an anxious dog. This kind of works on about 80% of dogs I've found. It does work on Porthos when he sometimes gets a bit anxious from time to time. But again, these are not fixies. These are additional tools. These are supplementations. These are assistants to your actual behavior modification, which we will dive into now. So, Jay, do you want to start by kicking us off with desensitization and counter conditioning, as well as the importance of maintenance routine?
Yep. Okay, so this is the basis of a lot of behavioral training or behavioral adjustment. It's desensitization and counter conditioning. Everyone probably has heard this term a 1,000 times by now. So what is it? It's basically involving small bits of exposure, gradually exposing your dog to the trigger, to the stimuli, which in this case is sounds of storms. So at a low volume, you play the sound of a storm, and then you just keep offering your dog treats or keep offering your dog praises or keep engaging in play with your dog. So doing this enough times, it creates a positive association with the sound that previously triggered fear. So if you can keep doing this over an extended period of time, and I'm talking about really long time, it really depends on how deeply rooted the fear is in your dog. With Blue, it did take quite a long time. With Ori, it didn't take so long because Blue was a lot more affected by thunder phobia than Ori was. So if your dog is really scared, it's going to take them a long time. So sometimes you might do it for a week straight and you might not see any results, but you have to keep at it. You can't just go, you know what, it's not working, I don't want to do it anymore, because then that makes it even worse for them, because they might be just on the verge of a breakthrough, and then suddenly you stop, and then they're like, oh, you know what, maybe my owner wasn't trying to get my fear of thunder any help. So over time, the volume of the sounds that you're playing of the storm, you have to slowly increase it. So as long as your dog stays calm, you slowly increase the volume. If your dog starts showing signs of stress or anxiety, you lower back the volume. Then that means you know that that's the volume that your dog can handle. So you have to be able to increase it to a point whereby the volume of whatever you're playing, of the storm, of the thunder, of the rain, is similar to, if not more than, what a real life thunderstorm would be like. And if your dog can handle that, that means you know that at least you have that checked off. So, and then you start looking at other things as well. So it could be like, for Blue, it wasn't so much of the sound, it was the change in air pressure. I think we discussed this before, right, Fraser? It was the bloody change in air pressure that would happen right before it started raining that caused her to get so anxious and so nervous. So I did so much work on desensitizing and counter conditioning with, like, the sound of the rain, the actual rain itself. But the thing that was triggering her was it was something that was very hard to replicate. So sometimes if you're in that situation, it's more about maintaining a very good routine. So, which is what I'm going to cover right now. So if you have a regular daily routine, your dog has a stronger sense of security, a stronger sense of structure, a more trust in you. It builds a stronger bond. It reduces their anxiety levels on a day-to-day basis. So during a thunderstorm, or maybe like the couple minutes leading up to a thunderstorm, you can engage in normal activities like playing, training, going for a walk, things to divert their attention, and it gives them a sense of, like, normalcy. So your dog will be like, oh, you know what, there's nothing's wrong. Well, I don't know why I was nervous in the first place. This one played a big part in helping Blue get over her thunderphobia. So when she started getting nervous, I just went like, let's go out. We're gonna go for a walk, and it might be raining, so we'll just stay somewhere in the sheltered area, and then she loves going for walks. So that is probably like her number one reward, or close to number one. So that's what I used to positively reinforce with her. And then now, I wouldn't say 100% of the time, but a good 80 to 90% of the time, when it's about to rain, when it starts raining, she doesn't give a shit. She just sleeps. She just continues sleeping on the sofa.
Yeah, I mean, desensitization is a very useful one, because it's one that can be used over a good long duration of time. Something that's fairly similar sounding to most people, but also quite different, is counter conditioning. So counter conditioning is when you actually pair the so-called negative stimuli with a positive exposure. So what you've got to think about here is that you're using rewards based on either food, play, or affection, all three of which create a dopamine rush or an endorphin rush in the brain. And if you're able to match that stimulus with the negative, that can be very, very productive. Whether it be as simple as checking the weather forecast, knowing that there's a storm coming, and playing with your dog as that storm is about to hit, can be as simple as that. Now, that's not the easiest way of doing it, but it is one way which works. And it's one which I used with Athos and Aramis when they were younger. I used to take them out on walks and have them play in the park just before the thunderstorms were going to hit, and then I would take them inside. But that was more of a not so much a solution as it was a deterrent before the fact. So the way Jay explained there how to do the desensitization is very, very effective, and it's one that I would highly recommend because it's one that people can do by themselves in the home as well. Now, Jay, explain the importance of maintaining a routine with regards to thunderphobia, would you?
Okay, so wait, sorry, did I go over that already?
Did you? Oh,
I?
sorry. Possibly
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Sorry, man. Okay, so
Go ahead.
what I'll do now is I'll talk about concept training. Now, concept training is something that a lot of people maybe aren't very aware of. It's a different sort of way of looking at things. And effectively, what concept training is you are boosting your dog's confidence by teaching them how to handle various situations independently. Now, it might not actually have anything to do with thunder specifically. It could seemingly be completely unrelated, but it's effectively teaching them the concept of confidence or calmness or independence so that they can learn how to not just cope with one specific situation, but in any stressful situation or unusual environment which they might be exposed to. Now, this is really, really useful in dealing with thunderphobia, especially in situations where the trigger is not audio or visual, but it could be more based on the stimulus or the smell of rain, or it could be based on the barometric pressure changes, which we have absolutely no control over. So using concept training for this is going to be really the best way of handling that. And I know that you, Jay, you use that quite extensively with Blue throughout the time that you've been handling that with her.
Yep.
So everything we've spoken about prior to this is very useful. It does work. So don't discount it just because we're talking about this aspect. But this aspect is a little bit more into the psychology-based aspect, which is really hammering into the root cause of the issue. So to apply concept training to managing thunderphobia, we might look at things as simple as novelty training. Now, this is when we use games where a lot of the people that are listening that may be maybe clients of ours or ex-clients of ours will have been exposed to things like the chaos game or novelty games or rewarding the art of doing nothing, things like that. These are novelty training exercises where we are actually, for lack of a better term, manipulating the brain chemistry of the dog by applying a rush of endorphins where the situation may be potentially scary with it being novel, but we start off at a very low exposure. So this could be obstacles, it could be objects, it could be situations, it could even be things as simple as teaching your dog to go through puzzles, which might be a bit more challenging, improving their self-confidence, improving their ability to deal with novelty situations, things that seem completely unrelated to thunderstorms, but you notice that as you use these, they actually really make a big difference in how your dog actually views the world and their optimism with regards to being exposed to new things. It's truly quite amazing to work on, and it's something that I used in all three of my dogs. I know this isn't what we're talking about in this podcast, but with regards to Athos, who was quite reactive to other dogs, to a real dangerous situational base, This is the way that I really managed to get him no longer doing that, because he was more optimistic to being around other dogs and being around situations where he didn't feel like he had the control. Now, this leads us on to another concept-based exercise chain, and that is trust. Trust is a wonderful thing, and it's something that people misunderstand all the time. And Jay and I see it every day when we see clients. We'll say, your dog needs to trust you more. Every single time you get them having this look of they're almost hurt when you say that. But what people need to realize is that love and trust are not the same thing. So a great example of that is something as simple as, I am very, very sure that everybody watching this right now loves their spouse more than they love me. But if you were hanging off the edge of a cliff, unless your spouse is far larger
Powerlifter.
than I am, then you're more than likely going to trust somebody who's 6'3" and 120 kilograms to pull you up from that cliff's edge than that person that you love most dearly. As I say, unless you are like a powerlifter's spouse or whatever. But
Yeah.
that just shows you that love and trust are completely different things. Your dog can love you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they trust you 100%. So we build this trust up through exercises such as things as easy as basic training, or through doing exercise, actual physical exercise with your dog can be a conceptual exercise to build their trust in you. And that leads us to the next aspect, which is choice training, allowing your dog to make a choice during training sessions, during the controlled examples that you're putting your dog into, so that they actually understand within that spectrum that you're giving them what the best choice is to make, whether that be through solving a puzzle so they can get a treat, or whether it be in a situation where your dog can choose to either engage in a situation which has no reward setting to a situation that does, which could be as simple as a dog going to sniff a bush versus coming back to you and being given love or a treat or something like that. And then proofing that into a real life situation. Again, seems completely unrelated to thunderphobia, but as you build that into real life scenarios, it has such a huge impact. And it's something that I would always, always advise people to approach any professional that they're working with to have their dog worked with in concept training. Now, the next aspect of this would be calmness training. So, Jay, do you want to talk about relaxation protocols and controlled exposure?
Yep. Okay. So relaxation protocols are things that you should have on hand. You should know what to do to help your dog settle down and relax in no matter what's going on. So this is something that you have to reinforce over a long period of time, so that whenever it's very chaotic or whenever it's very stressful, there's thunderstorms, your dog knows how to calm themselves down when you start this protocol. So there are methods like Dr. Karen Overall's relaxation protocol. So it helps condition your dog to settle down and relax. So do you have the link for that? If you could post that up, that'll be very helpful. Also, there is things like controlled exposure. So it's what I was talking about earlier as well. You have to slowly expose your dog to the cause of stress, to the thunderstorm, at a very manageable level. And I want everyone to think about this very simply for a moment. You do not force your dog into this stressful situation. So because I've seen trainers post videos on social media where, for example, your dog is scared of a certain threshold, like scared of this part in your house. So what they do is they leash the dog and then they drag the dog onto that place and then they offer their dog a treat. That's not how you do things. You want your dog to still have full control over everything, Like you want your dog to still be able to make the choice of whether they want to engage in this or not. If they choose not to engage, that just means that your dog is too stressed out to accept a reward from you, or is too stressed out or too worried to do a particular thing. So never force your dog into doing something like that. You can, if you expose your dog to the lowest volume of a thunderstorm and your dog is already freaking out, do not try that. There are other things that we can do. And I would say that if your dog really can't handle like the sound of a recorded thunderstorm at its lowest volume, that means you need our help 100%, because that is very, very severe. That's a really bad case of thunderphobia. And I would really recommend that you get a consultation with us or with a proper behavioral canine behaviorist. Yeah. So desensitizing in a controlled exposure manner helps your dog associate thunders, the sounds of thunder, sounds of rain, with a lot of calmness and safety, as long as you use this protocol that Fraser posted up. Samantha said, thanks guys for insightful advice as always. Need to go feed the community dogs now. Thank you for feeding the dogs, Samantha.
So the next part of this, on top of the calmness training, which I do advise everybody, if you're not watching this on Facebook Live and you're listening on one of the podcast providers, I guess, have a look at our show notes and have a look at Dr. Karen Overall's relaxation protocol, which is very, very useful. Now, the next aspect of concept training is flexibility training. Now, this is when we train the dogs to perform learned behaviors under various conditions, which helps them reduce fear reactions to things like thunder, other dogs, ensuring that they don't panic. And it's effectively similar to a sport, if you like. If you've been trained to dip the shoulder if somebody's running at you during a game of American football, and that's what you do automatically on that stimulus, you're less likely to panic at the sight of that monster of a person running towards you. It's kind of the same idea here. So where you've got the idea of controlled exposure or desensitization or counter conditioning, flexibility training with the generalization could be as simple as having your dog being taught to go to their safe space or their bed, which is their safe space, on cue, and then creating one of those external stimulus as that cue. So thunderstorm hits, you hear the roll of that thunder. The moment that thunder starts to roll, you would send your dog to their bed and start the process of the calming protocol on that bed. So you're actually mixing the calming protocol, controlled exposure, and generalization into one exercise, which means that when your dog has been conditioned to this in a real life situation where that thunderstorm hits, they're going to go to their safe space and not only go to the space, but actually understand that that means they can actually chill out. And that's a huge aspect to helping your dog with thunderphobia. Now, I know that when I'm saying that, it might sound a little bit complicated, guys, but if you find somebody who's a good behavioral consultant, they will be able to help you get to that level. And yes, it's consistent that's needed. Yes, the guidance is needed, but it makes a huge difference to not just your dog's life, but also yours when it comes to things that are creating anxiety, whether it be thunder, fireworks, separation anxiety, or anything your dog's getting stressed out about. Now, similarly to that, you've got BAT, behavior adjustment training. Now, this can be used to naturally guide the dog to make positive choices. Now, the difference between this and actually doing generalization is that BAT is your dog making the choice for themselves. So you've got to actually set up that situation so that you're rewarding calmness or curiosity rather than fear, while you are exposing,
Exposure.
sorry, while you are exposing them to that trigger in a controlled environment, such as using audio or the likes, whether it be through distance or volume or anything else. Now, again, this is one that you would need guidance for, but again, it is extremely, extremely beneficial for any dog who is struggling with anxiety-based behaviors. So with that said, guys, this brings us kind of to the end of what thunderphobia is, how you can manage it, what you can do to improve it, and what can be done to actually get you to a full resolution of the situation. It might sound like a lot. To successfully implement this, you've got to be patient, you've got to be consistent, and more often than not, for the more complex stuff, such as concept training, you will need professional guidance. So with that, what I would say to everybody is take a look at the show notes. Take a look at the links that we're providing in those show notes and ask questions. If you've not been listening to us live and you're watching this as a recording, whether that be on Facebook, whether it be on YouTube or anything else, talk to us in the comments, ask those questions. We will get back to you, or reach out to us on our website, on the Noble Canine website, and we will get back to you. And of course, it doesn't matter if you are based here in Singapore, where we can have one-to-one in-person sessions, or whether you're throughout the world, where we can have one-to-one online sessions, or even if you're based in the UK or other areas that we travel to fairly regularly, we can have consultations with you in person if that lines up. So don't hesitate to reach out to us and ask for help. That's what we are here for. Okay. Now, before we go on to the concluding aspects of this, Jay, do you have anything to add? And for anybody listening live, do you have any questions or tips or stories that you would like to share in the comments for us? Do so while Jay gives us his final thoughts.
Okay, so thunderphobia is something that I feel like a lot of people have to deal with. It's something that happens, especially in Singapore. Like the weather is just shit here. Honestly, it doesn't help your dog that the weather is bloody hot for the afternoon and then pissing rain in the evening. It causes so much stress, not only to your dogs, to us as well, because you leave the house and then you start sweating like crazy, and then you get home and it starts raining, and then you fall sick and things like that. So all that actually adds up, builds stress in you, and then unknowingly your dog gets stressed because of that as well. And the thing is, dogs don't make that connection that, you know, rain is a natural phenomenon, that rain happens because, you know, of whatever meteorologists will say, the clouds form and all this kind of things. I'm not a scientist, obviously, but
Is-
yeah,
Is
what?
precipitation the word you're looking for
Yes,
there, Jay?
yes. That's the word. That's the bloody word. Yeah. So precipitation. Yeah. So we understand why it rains. I mean, it doesn't sound like I understand why it rains, but you get the idea. We might understand why it rains, but dogs don't. And then it's very unfair for us to say that, to just tell our dogs that, you know what, it's just rain, get over it. I've heard people say that before. Like, my dog's fine, it's just rain and things like that. It's basically, let's say that hopefully you don't have it, or listeners, you don't have it, like you have depression, and then like your closest buddy just says, get over it, it's just depression, that kind of thing. So if you don't want that advice to be on you, you shouldn't think that way to your dogs either. It's just not fair.
That's a very good comparison, actually, Jay, is that this, like, not taking the fear or condition or trauma of somebody else seriously is pretty poor as far as being a human being goes, because their worst experience is their worst experience. It doesn't matter if you've had way more traumatic experiences or way harder life. If their hardest thing that they've ever dealt with is something that you see as small, then that's not your place to discount their struggles. And it goes the same for our dogs. If our dogs are struggling with something, we shouldn't be discounting it just because to us it doesn't seem like a very big deal. I think that's a very important point to make, actually.
Yep. So
With that, guys, we come to the end of our podcast on Thunderphobia. Please seek advice if you need it. If your dog is suffering for Thunderphobia, please seek advice from us. Seek advice from others who are qualified to do so. Take part in our Facebook group. We've got the Noble Canine Facebook page, we've got the Wagging Tails Facebook page, and we've also got our private Facebook group, which is now available for people to ask questions and get answers directly. The link for this will be in the show notes, but it's a Positive Training Hub is what it's called. It's a private Facebook group. You can ask to join, and we're very happy to have you join, ask questions, to get your help from videos or whatever else, be part of the community. It's something that I really hope is going to take off and help a lot of people. Another thing, just to encourage anybody that's based in Singapore, do take a look at our group classes. They are growing, they are doing very well. We absolutely love doing them. I don't know why we've not been doing them sooner, but we've been loving doing the stuff down at East Coast Park. We've been loving doing the stuff with Doggy Retreat, with the puppy classes, the grooming classes. We're soon to be opening up the preparation for the vet classes, as well as others, such as enrichment and fitness and things along those lines, all of which directly impact your dog's behavior through actually reaching their activity needs. Look out for the online courses, which are going to be coming up soon. These give all of you guys that are listening, all over the world, an opportunity to learn from us, to connect with us. And we are very, very happy to help and really grateful for anyone that does engage with us. And just before we go, if any of you guys who are enjoying the podcast, enjoying all of the tips and the advice that we give, please do consider joining our Patreon, which will be in the show notes, and give us the link. It is not much. It's just enough to give Jay and I a cup of coffee, but it hugely helps the podcast. And it means that we can reach out and get more guests and get the equipment that we need to try and make the quality of the podcast as best as we can. And it helps support people like Hermes, who are in the back end helping us do this and making this podcast better. So, to end it off, thank you all for your participation. Tune in next week and keep your dogs happy as well as yourselves. Thank you, guys. Cheers.